Hey everybody. Today I wanted to talk about the notion of a task backlog. we If you don't have a task backlog, you probably should. So, and then people immediately say, I don't know what a task backlog is. In fact, people ask me all the time, okay, Larry, you talk about attention compass. What is attention compass? And the most straightforward answer I currently believe is that attention compass is a tool and a process for managing your task and information backlog. Now, the reason I don't usually answer the question that way is that most people don't really know what a backlog is and how a backlog might benefit them. In fact, many people don't know that backlog management is a well-studied problem in the agile project management field. If you're familiar with terms like Agile and Scrum and those kinds of ideas, then a big chunk of that is, okay, how do we manage the backlog? And even in more traditional project management philosophies, a lot of effort is spent on keeping track of the things that we're not doing now, but need to do in the future. Much more effort is spent on that than is spent on recognizing what has already been completed. And so this idea of, well, we know what we need to do, but we can't do all of it now. So what do we do with that knowledge? And the answer to that question is we create a backlog. So when we talk about a task backlog, what we mean is a previously generated list of tasks that you're not doing now, and you maintain this list of tasks over time. And so by maintain, I mean we have processes that help us tend to the list so the list stays current. We need to be able to add new tasks easily. We need to be able to remove old tasks, both those that are completed or those that for other reasons no longer matter. And we need to be able to capture information about tasks that may be on that list. So you get new information about something that you need to do, you need to associate that new information with the task in the backlog somehow. And again, in agile project management, maintaining the backlog is a first class, first level priority for those processes that do agile. So when we think about this, it's okay, so fine, a backlog is this list of things I'm not doing now, right? And we think, okay, well, why is that important to have and to maintain? And I'll give actually several reasons for this. So we want to recognize that we have previously thought about these tasks, okay? We want to capture that thinking. And as I commonly say, we don't want to hold this stuff in our brains because our brains are not built for that. Our brains serve us up things at odd times, and it's seldom the time that we need it. People that do a daily to-do list are asking their brains a very, very challenging and complicated question every morning. So they get out a piece of paper and they go, okay, brain, what are the things that I should be working on today? And what people don't realize when they ask themselves that question is that it's a very difficult question for your brain to answer. So one thing that we kind of put in there is the high priority things. We don't always say it when we ask ourselves the question, but that's really what we're looking for. What should my priorities be for today? Well, priority, as I've talked about in other places, is this combination of urgent and important. Okay? Your brain is very good often with urgency. but importance is something that your brain really doesn't consider very well off the cuff. So we have to think about importance. And so the other thing is this notion of today, okay? And I believe that our brains are not very good with that thought as well. And so today meaning the next 8 hours, right? What you're asking your brain to do is this complex estimation of how long the things are going to take, and is there time to add in another high priority task. And typically we'd love to have these things served up in priority order and in a batch that is doable during a day today. Okay. And so for those reasons, this is a very difficult question for your brain to answer, but that's really the one we're asking when we make our daily to-do list. So I argue that having an ongoing, well-maintained task and information backlog is a much more useful solution. Now, what are the benefits of this solution? Well, first and foremost is we can stop asking our brains the every morning pop quiz of, hey, what should my priorities be for today? Okay. Instead, what we can do is we can go back and look at the backlog of things that have already been generated. And then we can begin to problem solve against that list. And when I say problem solve, we got to solve 2 problems. One is, what are the highest priority things? And 2 is, how many of them can I fit into today? Okay. So if we have a good, well-maintained list of things that we're not doing, or that we haven't done, but need to, then we can work that list with a thoughtful, systematic approach, as compared to just asking our brains a big old question that our brains really can't easily answer. So our brains can figure it out, but our brains can't just pop off an answer. So the one thing is, the benefit of the backlog is we don't have to generate a to-do list from scratch. Okay. Another benefit of the backlog is we can capture things that we're not ready to work on as we think of them. So you're out at your child's ball game and you think, bing, okay, oh, there's this thing that needs to be done, right? Maybe it's urgent, maybe it's not, whatever. But having a place to put that so that you can take advantage of having that thought, rather than pushing that thought away for a better time, which is not at all the way our brains work, right? Our brains work on environmental urgency. And so they're constantly anxious and driven by this urgency. And urgency is not the only component of priority. Sometimes we have to push urgency aside so that we can do things that are important, right? And we've talked about this elsewhere. So we're able to avoid generating to-do lists from scratch. We're able to capture items as they occur to us that we're not ready to work on. And I'll add one additional benefit to that second one. If we can get it out of our brains, then our brains will learn eventually to not worry about it. We can train our brains to accept the fact that our system is providing a solution to that problem. And when I talk about clarity and peace and these big vague words like that, that's what I mean. Is you train your brain to understand that all it's got to do is produce the idea one time, and you'll capture it in the system, and then your brain can forget about it and go on and do the things your brain does well. If we have a good backlog, then we can develop a routine to generate today's work without having to pop quiz the difficult question to our brains. Okay. we can work on this as we go. I talked about capturing information as it occurs to us about tasks that are already on the list. Is, oh, you know what? If I've got to call the painter, it'd be a good idea to also talk to him or her about this other project. Okay? So then we can go back to our backlog and we can add that new information, that additional tasking, to an item that's already in the list. And that way we're more productive and we're able to solve problems differently. So if one of the things on your task list is, figuring out my next kitschy marketing product, right? My next tchotchke. Okay, I need a new tchotchke. Then as you're in the world and you see things that might be useful for you in this space, then you can actually capture them on the fly, okay? Which is a great alternative to the way I've seen many people do it, which is, let me think up a new tchotchke, okay? But if you can capture this stuff on the fly, then the way your brain solves problems and presents solutions to you is more naturally incorporated into your management system. And then maybe the final benefit of having a backlog and maintaining a backlog is that you can go ahead and make some decisions ahead of time. Okay. I say some and I say ahead of time, right? And what I mean by that is you can begin to think about the relative priority of tasks before it's time to start your work for the day. You could do it the night before, for example, or you could do it as an ongoing process and say, hey, remember, you can't do this task until you've done that task, and you can record that into your system in some useful ways. Maybe finally, and I'm doing this on the fly, and so these things are occurring to me as we talk. But maybe another huge benefit of having a backlog is that you can meaningfully postpone things. Okay, with a to-do list, it's pretty binary. So I'm either going to do it today or I'm not going to write it down. Now that doesn't always work out, and I understand, but we would really prefer, if we're not going to do it today, for it not to be on that to-do list. And so one of the primary problems is there's no good place to put that. So it's occurred to us that we need to do it. We know we're not going to do it today, so we don't want it on our to-do list, but there's no other good place to put it. And therefore we have to stick it back in our brains and hope that it'll pop up at an appropriate time, which, for reasons we've talked about, is actually a pretty poor task management strategy. So that's what a backlog is. It's not conceptually a difficult thing. Conceptually, what's difficult for people is to understand that the backlog needs to be out there and not in here. Okay, because in here it's all cluttered up and jumbled and we can't make sense of it. We get it out there, we can do it. The other primary problem with the backlog, and this is what happens in agile project management, is developing processes to maintain the backlog or the set of things we're not working with now. But at least if it's outside of our heads, then we can capture ideas about those tasks and capture new information about those tasks. So that's what a backlog is. And we talked about some of the benefits, right? So we talked about we don't have to generate a to-do list from scratch every morning. And the reason we don't want to do that is because it's a really challenging question to ask your brain. Maybe another benefit is it's a place to capture ideas that we're not ready to work on. We can develop a routine to generate today's work. So with an attention compass implementation in place, the first task of the day is to go to the previously generated, vetted, thought through list of things that might be good to do today. And so you're selecting from that list that exists out there rather than trying to get your brain to generate it on the fly. And then finally, we can capture decisions ahead of time. Additional information presents itself and we go, oh, it turns out that that task is going to be best done on Tuesday. Why Tuesday? Well, on Tuesday, I'm going to be with the person or be in the context when that task will be done. So let me figure out a way to tell myself, oh, Tuesday, the 5th would be a great day to do this, and to store that out of the way somewhere such that it reminds us or it comes back to the list on Tuesday the 5th when we can actually do something about it and doesn't occupy a bunch of mental space for us between now and Tuesday, during which we can't really do much about that task. So if you're thinking about attention compass, love to talk to you about it, and just think about the value of having this structured backlog of work and information in your life. And the attention compass is the workflows in attention compass are all about generating and capturing those ideas, processing them, which is the first act of getting them organized into the backlog. A daily review where we take a look at our backlog and then make thoughtful, knowledgeable decisions about what we're going to bring in to our current workspace and attempt to get done on that day. And then the fourth workflow is this weekly review where we look at the bigger picture and we say, well, what about my projects and what about my due dates and all this stuff. So think about starting to generate a task and information backlog in your world. If attention compass is a solution that makes sense to you for that, then we'd love to talk to you. So this has been Larry. I hope you're having a great week, and I hope you're out there doing busy right. See you soon.